Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. Today, we'll talk about modernizing courts through digitizing payments and pleas. This webinar is brought to you by Paid. I'm Nadia Davis, I lead public sector marketing here at Paid, and I will help run today's event. And with that, let me introduce today's panel. We have three amazing speakers. Jean Nobel from Paid, who runs operations here at Paid, will run today's discussion. And then we also have Shannon Ramsey Chessman, who is Chief Deputy Clerk and Chief of Staff from Palm Beach County, Florida, and Mike Hammond, Clerk of Court from Knox County, Tennessee. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Jean, I will toss it over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and thank you to everyone for joining today. I'm going to start off by just sharing a little bit about Pay It. So we serve state and local government across North America, and in doing so, we work with leaders to provide their residents the services that they need to work with the government. And so whether that is paying a court fine, whether that's paying for property tax or renewing their plates with the DMV, we provide seamless, frictionless experiences that get them out of the office and provide the staff with the time that they need to complete their duties rather than having folks come in and stand online. And so at the end of the day, with innovative solutions, we have found that you can really draw down the people coming into the courthouse, as well as really eliminating any reason why people would need to call the court. And so drawing down on the time that people spend on the phone or serving people in person enables them to better serve at scale. So talking about some of the benefits that our customers have received, we have a human-centered design approach that enables us to really empathize with both the residents and the court staff to better understand their problems. We enable residents to avoid the consequences that their license would be revoked or have a hold on their vehicle registration if they don't deal with the things that they need to at the court. And so things like setting up payment plans, setting up auto pay against those payment plans, they really enable the cycle of value, both for the residents and for the staff of the court. I wanted to take just a moment to talk about some of the trends that we're seeing across digitizing these courts. So, innovative solutions that we see beyond just paying for your ticket and entering that guilty plea really stem into a few other categories. And the managing workflows really enables courts to have people submit information online and then for that information to be handled in the background with someone on their team. And so whether it's a guilty plea or a not guilty plea, those things can be made online by residents and then dispositioned by a judge in the background without a resident stepping foot in the court, calling and having to talk to someone, or really like engaging in a way that isn't scalable. And so getting those residents the information that they need to be successful is the way that they continue to do business in a way that's best for them. The way that's best for them might be at midnight. It might be before work in the morning, before the court is even open. And so having the ability to engage the defendants with notifications or reminders or those kinds of things also really takes down the toll on the court staff. And then the payment options I mentioned around having payment plans and really having the ability to diversify the way you take payments can be incredibly helpful. And that also includes taking payment in a space where it typically hadn't been before. Me and the other panelists were just speaking before the webinar about an example use case that we have where a local court wants to take bail payments at the time of arrest. And so they don't have to actually book the defendant. And that makes a huge difference for the defendant. It also is a major cost savings for the court. And so really diversifying the way that you take payment, that you provide digital workflows and provide your defendants with more information and engagement can really transform the way that your courthouse operates. It brings down the cost and effort for your overall team and enables them to, have more knowledge-based focus where they can diversify the work that they're doing, and cut down on the customer service that's needed on either side. So with that, I wanted to have some of our amazing folks talk about the results that they've had. And I'm going to turn it over to hear a little bit about what we see in Palm Beach County.
Hi, good morning. I guess it's good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So let me just kind of start with the journey of Palm Beach and how we ended up utilizing Pay It as one of our partners. So in the state of Florida, there's been a lot of dialogue, and I think it's been a national conversation as far as the suspension of driver's licenses for non-payment of fees and fines. So that's been a issue that is being discussed, like I said, nationally, and has been, there's been conversation here in the state of Florida regarding that tool that we, frankly, as the clerk of the court, utilize on behalf of our state partners, because we're the arm that is collecting those fees on behalf of others. It is not a full clerk revenue. There's a lot of distribution to local government in the state. But the focus that we had in our office, we sat down and said, listen, that conversation only comes into play when you have a constituent that has now moved on to being out of compliance. So we really wanted our effort to be in never getting to that point. So let's not have a dialogue about whether you suspend and all of the issues related to that. Let's work so that we're a partner with constituents to make sure they're never getting into the suspension situation to begin with. And that really starts with simply having activity, whether it's $1 or they're paying fees and fines in totality. Let's maximize what we're doing in that space. So in Florida, part of the statute provides that constituents can be put on a payment plan. If a constituent is actively on a payment plan, then regardless of what the balance is or what the terms of the payment plan are, they are not in a suspension status. So if they're paying $1 a month or $5 a month, then they stay out of the suspension world. So those payments for us were made via mail or were made in person. We have understanding our constituency. You've got a certain amount of the population that has no uncomfortability coming in and dialoguing in person, coming into the counter to pay, something to that effect, or even mailing the check in. But a lot of our returning citizens are not comfortable, frankly, coming into the judicial center. So again, understanding our constituency and trying to help them. Our team put in place a process to be able to get somebody established on a payment plan, but we didn't have the payment avenue that allowed them to digitally pay. So when we first engaged with Pay It, that was exactly the focus that we had, and it's the first thing that we started with. So we put in place a system. We worked in partnership with Pay It to be able to have APIs between our case maintenance system and the Pay It platform, real-time information related to the status of payment plans, the total amount due, what the monthly payments are, those expectations, the terms of the payment plan. And that allows our customers now to self-manage. They can go in and they trigger the payment that is due, and we have real-time interface over to our case maintenance system. So we know immediately a payment's received. We don't have any issue related to timeliness. That's a situation that we don't even have with paper checks. Staffing shortages. Again, I think a lot of us in government are doing more with less. So having our staff trying to manually either sift through paper checks or even servicing folks at the counter is an inordinate amount of staff time. And again, if we had checks coming in, sometimes you'd be 2-3 days before we had made our way through the system and then input the receipt. All of that now interfaces between the two systems. So the next step for us in that process has been to set up auto pay. So I will only speak for myself. I don't ever go in and trigger my mortgage payment. I have an auto pay set up. It's established. It's going to draw on the first day of the month, and I don't think about it again. Even if you just get busy in life, if you're having to go in and actually set up and trigger that payment, one could forget, let alone, again, if you have a constituency that is either returning citizen, they have their focus elsewhere. So setting up an auto pay keeps them in compliance. So while the dollar amount due requires interaction from our office, again, you don't have to come in, the actual payment gives our constituents an opportunity to be able to handle that on their own and not come downtown. You can see from the information here online, it's been extremely successful as a whole. We started with payment plans because of the partnership, the fluidity with the relationship that we've had with Pay It. Frankly, been a very easy vendor to work with because it's a solution-oriented conversation. When we present Pay It with our issue, we're able to talk about a solution. So we've expanded Pay It as a payment method for regular online traffic payments, but also now other criminal type payments where, again, we were not doing that online, some of it due to the timeliness, but because we have the seamless interface in the systems, it's the same timeliness as somebody walking in our office and making the payment. So our online revenue has increased 14%, and that isn't just the COVID response, that's the convenience response. Our main office is situated in downtown West Palm here in Palm Beach County. Like many of you, it is a nightmare to get in and out of downtown. It's and it requires folks to take quite a while out of their day to be able to get here, wait in line, and go through. And then again, you can see online transaction increase almost 30%. So we're utilizing this as a tool because we understand our issue, that's your key, and then who your constituency is. And part of that last piece of the constituency is when you're dealing with the criminal justice system, it's a zero-sum game. If you mess up on your payment, you make it late, you forget, you pay the wrong amount, you pay it short. Here in Florida, you're suspended. You go into this suspension status if you haven't made your payments and you've gone delinquent by 90 days. It requires us as clerks in Florida to send you to a suspension status. So again, understanding our constituents want to know for sure I'm paying the right amount. I've made my payment on time, right? That's where we used to get a voice call. Because that information is readily available to them in the Pay It platform, there's a comfortability. It's almost like in their mind, they're looking at our case maintenance system, seeing on the screen what our clerk would see, because that's how it presents to them in the Pay It platform. And with phones, while we don't have necessarily everybody that's online with a computer, what we do have is folks on mobile, in the mobile platform, and the online platform being identical. Again, we don't have constituents that are seeing things in a different spot. The button is in a different place. People get thrown off by that, often going, I need it to look the way I expect it to look. I can use this platform. I feel comfortable because you are telling me this is my minimum payment due. It is due by this date. I can see that. I know what today is. I know I've made my payment. So then they are not reaching out to us to confirm or having us process the transaction so that they have a sense of assurance. So that's a little bit about the Palm Beach story.
Thank you so much for sharing all about that. I think, some of the trends that we see across all the courts we work in are very similar to what you mentioned. Really decreasing the checks that are being processed and the folks that are coming in and the calls that are being received is just paramount for courts across North America. So thank you so much for sharing that story.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. Clerk Hammond, can I ask you to share a little bit about your experience bringing services online and just further digitizing your court?
Well, sure, absolutely. And welcome to the Smoky Mountains. We're glad that you all could join us here today. How we got started with Pay It. We were with another company, and quite frankly, that company was not giving us what we needed or wanted. And so we kept trying to work with the previous company saying, hey, we're a numbers game. We need numbers, and we need to be able to provide these services for our citizens. And the company was eventually sold. And so when the new company came in, we again met with them and said, hey, these are the things that we need. And quite frankly, they said, we can't give you what you're wanting. And so after we heard that, we thought, okay, we need to make a change. And so we started looking at what our options were. Quite frankly, I had never heard of Pay It. And so it was recommended to us that we talk with the folks at the company. We did. We had maybe 2 or 3 Zoom calls. Folks came into Knoxville and enjoyed our great Southern hospitality here and explained how the company worked, their philosophies, and that they had other courts. I think we were one of the first in Tennessee that would be a client, and we liked what we heard. And so we did a contract, and so they came on board, and when they did, they were able to provide us with most of what we needed. To say that we were antiquated is an understatement. We were way behind in technology, as I guess a lot of government offices are. And so we wanted to really provide an extra set of services because, quite frankly, when people go to Walmart or they go to Target and they're able to do transactions and it's seamless, but yet they would come to our counter and it was very clunky and it would take forever to try to print a receipt and those kinds of things. People would look at us and say, what kind of operation are you running here? Why don't you go to Walmart or Chick-fil-A or somewhere and learn how to do things? Well, it's not that simple, as you know, in the government sector. But Pay It has given us that. And so as we work through the process with them, they work very closely with our IT people. And I can tell you that during the process, we, explained what we needed, what we expected from the company, and they exceeded our expectations. We could not be more pleased with what the company has done for us. Now, I believe we've been doing it now for about a year, maybe a little. I think we celebrated our first year anniversary because I believe Bradley and his team brought us bagels and donuts to help celebrate the 1 year anniversary. But as you can see, we've totaled $4.6 million in 1 year with 26,000 transactions. And what's also important is 99% of the customers completed a payment with no need to contact support. We have found that when people do contact support or we contact support, it's usually done within that day, maybe a matter of hours. And so the customer support is second to none. That was important to us because before there was very little customer support and we were getting complaints, and that type of thing. Now, what that has done for us is it has given us an assurance that our numbers are accurate. I think I may have mentioned earlier that this is a numbers game for us. As an elected official, I want to be able to go to the community and say, here's what we've done. Here's how we have improved the office. Here's how we have improved our service to you, our constituents. And so we've been able to do that with Pay It because our tagline is don't stand in line when you can pay online. And as Shannon stated, people don't like driving into downtown Knoxville, even though we're a smaller city than some, although we have 500,000 people here. They don't like driving downtown. They don't want to pay to park and then get out of your car. You walk into the city county building, you go through security, you come to our counter, you do your transaction, you go back to your car, you go back home. You're talking about an hour or 2 out of your day. With this, we're now able to say, go online. Here's the website for you to go to. They can take care of your needs. And when 99% say they have no need for customer support, that to me shows just how easy it is for people to use and how easy it is for them to make their plans. We found out a couple of years ago that we were having a real problem in Tennessee and in Knox County with driver's license suspensions. People who had their driver's licenses suspended were having difficulty dealing with the Department of Safety in getting their licenses back. And so we met with the Department of Safety and said, what can we do to help this process? They told us, and we put together a plan with Nashville and the Department of Safety to help people get their driver's licenses back. To date, we have had over 3,000 people in Knox County get their driver's license reinstated. I mentioned that because a component of that is payment plans, as Shannon was saying, being able to bring people in and say, hey, let's satisfy your financial obligations, and we can work on the other obligations you have to get your license back. Pay It has been an integral part of that because we're able to go to people and say, hey, $25 a month, et cetera, or whatever it is, to get your driver's license reinstated. It's very easy for them to do because they can go online from either their computer or they can, go to the library, whatever, so they don't have to drive downtown. You and I both know that even though people are driving on a suspended license, that doesn't mean they're not driving. They're driving, they're just driving illegally. So we've been able to help with that process. The expungement process, we have an expungement court that we do here twice a week where people can come talk about getting their cases expunged. And part of that, of course, is the financial component. Pay It has been able to help us with that because we say, hey, here's the website. We can help you set up, et cetera. Our call center, we have a call center. We're able now, when people call in to make a payment, we say, hey, we're happy to take your payment, but we have an online service. It's called Pay It. And so you can now call and you can make your payments. And, you don't have to make that phone call now. We're happy to take your call, but we want to make sure that you understand that it's more convenient for you. So all in all, it has really made a difference with us. I mentioned reporting earlier and getting reports. That's extremely important because we can get them on a daily basis now. We know where our money is. We know how much money we're getting in. We know where the money is coming from. They're able to do graphs for us to show how much payments are coming in off the phone. I want to say it's a very, very detailed report so that we know exactly the efficiency of Pay It as well as what we're doing from our counter and people who might be taking payments over the phone and sending them to payment. Because a lot of times when they call in our call center, we'll actually go on Pay It and set it up for them and then say, hey, your account's set up, whatever. Now you can do it on your own. And that we have found that to be extremely helpful. So all in all, I cannot say enough good about Pay It. We actually recommended it to another office here in our building, and they are now on Pay It as well. I'm the criminal court clerk. We have a civil court clerk, a circuit court clerk, and they have now gone to Pay It. And so they have been very pleased too with the results. And so they haven't paid me to say anything, except they did give me a bagel. So I thought I would let you know that I can't say that I didn't receive any compensation for this because I did get a bagel and a cup of coffee. But I can tell you that we have just been extremely pleased with what Pay It has done for us and how they have modernized our collection system here in Knox County.
Thank you so much, Clerk Hammond. I hope you enjoyed the bagel. And we'll make sure to thank Bradley for that. Something that you touched on that I hadn't mentioned was the customer support element. So with Knox County and other Pay It clients, there is the ability to add, the phone, the chat, the email support, as well as the help center so that residents can self-serve and, ask questions and look at the FAQs and those types of things. And I would just say, if you look at the number of people who are calling or who are coming in to make just a standard payment, and that's more than, 5% of people who are making total transactions, please reach out to us. We see less than 1% of people, as mentioned by the slide here, who actually need help after doing a payment or trying to do a payment online. And so that's a real value as well. I think when we talked about that kind of 2.0 experience earlier, Clerk Hammond and I were speaking just about how people in 2024 have an expectation that it just works, right? It's the Starbucks app, it's Amazon, it's all of these consumer experiences where people just expect that it works and that they don't have to call or come in or mail a check or those types of things, which creates more work for your teams as well. And so Knox County has definitely been a leader in terms of evolving their digitization of the court. And I wanted to just spend a few more moments talking about kind of how we do this. So we've talked a lot about that resident experience and the things that we can avoid. And Clerk Hammond mentioned that people don't want to drive downtown and pay to park. And something I hear a lot about as well is that people can't take off work to come down during business hours. I mentioned that sometimes when people want to get their business done, it's an off hour, it's in the evening, it's on the weekend. And so having the ability to go in and see how much you owe and look at your tickets and submit a plea or set up a payment plan and get follow-up notifications about that is just an incredible advantage for your residents. And then on the back end side, there is also taking people out of line, taking people off the phone, making sure that your agency can optimize the time that they spend. I think in Palm Beach, we heard a little bit just about the processing of checks and those kinds of things. So these manual efforts that really consume the team's time can be reduced. And then Clerk Hammond also mentioned the reporting that is offered. So having analytics on how your collections is performing and when people are making payments and when the reconciliation is streamlined can make an enormous difference for your team as well. We see many courts who are trying to reconcile across a point of sale provider and an online provider and someone who takes payments over the phone. And we have found just remarkable time savings in pulling all of those together in a seamless way that has the robust information that Clerk Hammond referenced, so that not only can they reconcile, but then they can also go into a portal and look up a defendant and what they paid and when and those kinds of things. And so we view those to be table stakes in the market, and making sure that there is enough information over time for your defendants to get their business done and get their bills paid. And so with that, I want to open it up for questions, and it can be questions for any of our panelists. So we can bring them back on screen as well and see what questions we have from the audience. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Absolutely. This has been a great discussion. I got 3 questions that got submitted through email. So let me start with those. This is for everybody on the panel. What is your advice to your colleagues on this webinar who might be still looking for a digital payment partner or a digital payment solution? Shannon, let me start with you.
So really here was the key for us, and I think I mentioned it earlier, and this is what really separated Pay It out for us from, other vendors that we had worked with. And I didn't get a bagel and coffee. So I can totally say that I have no compensation. Just joking. But it really was walking in the room. I like to do things differently. I want to walk in the room and I want to have a conversation and say, here's our issue. We've identified a problem. I instruct my team process map, right? I want to understand beginning to end, where do we run into issues along the way so that we understand internally, have a conversation about our customer, understand the problem. Then I want to talk about a solution. Sometimes what you'll get is somebody comes in and goes, look, I have this great solution for you. Look, it's got bells and whistles and it looks great. And a lot of times folks don't even know if that solution is going to solve the problem. What we found with Pay It is when we first sat at the table, you guys were in listening mode. It wasn't sales mode. You came in listening mode, and we were dialoguing about where we were seeing issues. And in particular, we were having a compliance issue with payment plans. So we're sitting out in front of, whether it be Florida legislature, other members of our judicial partners, saying that we are trying to stand as this partner with our constituents to keep them from being suspended. And then they're on a payment plan and they're getting suspended because there's a hiccup in that. So we knew we had the problem. So the whole conversation was, what were we going to need? How soon were we going to need to know? We were going to need the real-time data, because everything is going to, the D6, the suspension is going to trigger from the system when they don't see a payment in there. So we can't wait for a weekly interface. There were and we just worked it through. And you all sat at the table as a partner with us to understand our constituents, our issue, to help us define a solution. So for anybody that's still looking at it, I would strongly encourage that you understand your own process and drive the bus. You know the issues that your constituents are having. You know what the solution needs to look like. And then you can meet with a partner to go, okay, we've defined our problem. Talk to me about how you can help us with the solution. And that makes a world of difference. But use technology when it solves a problem. Don't, technology for the sake of technology isn't really going to give you a better solution. It is a tool to help you solve a problem. So identify your problem, and then the tools will be there for you to resolve.
Well, for us, as I mentioned, when the other company told us that they could not give us what we needed, we knew we needed to make a change. And so first thing we did was a lot like Shannon. We got in a room with our people and said, okay, what do we need? What do we need from a new system? So that as we talk with potential vendors, we're able to say, here's what we need. Can you deliver? There's a difference between a sales pitch and results. And so we knew that we were going to be getting, pitches from the different vendors and so forth. And that was one of the things that set Pay It apart was, like Shannon said, those folks came in to listen. They wanted to hear, what are your needs? What can we provide for you? The second aspect of that was IT. I am the least technologically minded person on this panel. A man of my advancing years will tell you that I had to pass a typing test at the University of Tennessee before I could graduate. That kind of shows you where my technology skills have been. So I didn't really understand a lot about what would need to happen during the transfer. But our IT people, we brought them on board early before we even met with Pay It and said, okay, we're going to be talking with vendors. What's that going to mean in terms of interfacing with our case management system? So we had done our homework. And so when the folks from Pay It came in, and we did talk with other vendors too, they weren't the only ones. And so when Pay It came in, it was obvious they were head and shoulders above everybody because they listened. They had their IT people at the table on Zoom. I want to say they had maybe 4 or 6 people each time we met, and they were able to answer every question we had and talk about, okay, what if it does this? What if it does that? Talking to our IT people about, okay, what does that look like as we make the conversion? How long is it going to take? Training, those kinds of things. And so that would be my suggestion to anyone interested in learning about Pay It. Bring these folks to the table. You will not be disappointed. Even if you choose not to use them, you will still be impressed with their team because they have the experience and the know-how. That's what really turned the tables for us, is because after we had met with the team, it was very obvious you want to deal with people who know what they're doing, who are professional, and who do what they say they will do. And as we did our, we checked them out. And as we checked them out, we found out, hey, these people do what they say they will do. They will follow up, and they're not going to be here today and then 3 years from now gone. That's not this company. And so those were the things that really stood out with us. And I would just encourage people to do your due diligence.
Wow, it sounds like both of you had very common threads where you understood the problem that you were looking to solve and found a partner who was willing to listen. So that's great to hear. I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier was just the impact of people's lives that courts have. And it's something that we're particularly passionate about because it really does impact people's lives in a really meaningful way where it can interrupt major things if they're not compliant. And that hits home, right? All of us want to wake up in the morning and, spend time with our families and get our job done and go home. And so when people aren't able to do that, it really makes a big difference. And giving them the tools that are necessary to be compliant just makes all a difference when the problems of the court are also being solved. So that's awesome to hear.
Let me move on to the next question that we have. Again, this is for everyone on the panel. And this person wants to know, what advice would you give to your former self when you were only starting the journey, digitizing the payments and other options within the court that you didn't know back then that you know now? What would that be? Shannon, we can start with you, I guess.
It would be the reverse, seeing bells and whistles, right? So a product or a company presents to you, and then you think you want that. And again, if in not understanding and what the problem is and or the solution, because the solution is not the same, even if you're looking within the Pay It product line, right? So How I would probably address something if I was in the county's water utilities department for utility payments is very different than how we're approaching courts and even our client base. And even the motivation, I would say, of our team, right? It's intimidating. Like even a speeding ticket ruins your day, right? That's, you know, you're not criminally charged, but boy, oh boy, well, that will ruin your day. But being a returning citizen that is recently released from jail, all of the expectation of them in order for certain things that they need to do to be able to restore a license, to get payments going. Here in Florida, there's been some new legislation the last few years about being able to restore voting rights. There's an awful lot that's on their mind. The last thing that anybody wants to be thinking about is driving downtown or remembering their payment, right? So the motivation of our team was put yourself in their shoes and be able to help solve that problem. How would you want to deal with it if it was you? So my advice would be resist the flashy sales pitch. When somebody brings something to you that looks great and it sounds with all these, again, bells and whistles, and then you figure out, first of all, what you're paying for, you wouldn't use some of it. And it's not going to work. It might work for somebody else, but it doesn't work for your local jurisdiction. We're all different. So don't feel pressured in a pitch like that. And I'm going to speak from experience. I'm also the CIO here in Palm Beach for the clerk's office, which is funny because I'm a CPA by trade, but I am the CIO. And I can tell you, and I'm sure Clerk Hammond can tell you the same, weekly I'm getting, this is the greatest product ever created and it will make your life so much. And I get very, very aggressive sales pitches constantly. And I used to feel like I needed to respond to them or at least acknowledge them all and stuff. And now I sit back and I was like, if we have a problem and we need a solution, we will contact vendors and have the conversation. I'm not willing to have a pre-conversation. We'll determine what we need. So don't feel pressured to look at and talk to every vendor. Figure out what works for you and do your due diligence on your vendors. Follow up those references. Do your references, make your phone calls and talk to folks and hear from customers the real experience, because they'll tell you what the experience has been.
I guess my biggest thing looking back on it, I wish I'd done this sooner because I waited thinking that the previous company would be able to give us what we needed. And it was pretty obvious they couldn't, but I probably had the patience of a fool and just was too patient. And then, of course, when the sale happened and we were just basically told, we can't do it for you, we made the change. If I had to do it over again, I would have acted much sooner because seeing the results that we have from this company as opposed to what we had before, if we had done this 2 or 3 years sooner, we would have been collecting more money, we would have been a lot more efficient and that type of thing. One of the most important times in your life will be when you stand in front of a judge. There are many reasons why you would stand in front of a judge, but when you come out of that courtroom and you have judgment and you've got financial obligations, it could be whether it's a fee or a fine, but also restitution. That's also big, is because, if people have had something happen and there's restitution owed, they want their money in terms of restitution. So there's a lot involved in the financial aspects. And I think we did a pretty good job of trying to address those things with Pay It on the front end. But as we've gotten into it, we have found, okay, what if we did this? What if we did that? And so it's great that Pay It is willing to sit down with us and say, well, let's look at it. Maybe we can do that. There may be best practices in Palm Beach County and Kansas, wherever it may be, ideas that we can steal that we can bring to Knox County and do a much better job. As I told the folks from Pay It, we're a little different here in that we are a true fee office. And what that means is we exist off of the fees and everything that we collect through our office. Knox County does not give us a dime for payroll, for benefits, for pension, nothing. We're responsible. We pay for ourselves. And so that's why it is real important. And I explained that to Pay It on the front end. That's why it is real important that we be able to collect this money, not just for our office, but for all of Knox County, because everybody has financial pressures. And so being able to collect the money to give to the sheriff and the attorney general and the DARE program and litigation taxes, the list goes on and on and on. Being able to do that has been very key. And so we have been able to give additional monies to other organizations because of Pay It and because we have been able to be more efficient in our collections. So I guess the short answer to your question is I wish I'd done it sooner. And again, we can't think of everything as we've gone into the process, but now that we have gotten into the process and we're thinking, okay, can we do this? What if? Pay It has been a good partner in helping us look at that.
Jean, is there anything you would add based on you talking to many clients across the country, the aha moments that people have as they kind of go down further into the journey and realize that certain things could have been done, thought of, that they discover later? Anything you want to share?
I think both have mentioned examples of this, but I would just say there's a lot of like imagine the possible, right? Thinking outside of the paradigm that you work in today can really be a game changer. And so don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask the hard question of like, how do we automate this? Or how do we take this out of the day-to-day and just put it online? We really thrive on those kinds of challenges. We have an incredible product team who will come and observe the process and ask questions and come back with a recommendation on, hey, here's how we would go do this, and get feedback, right? And get your input and then socialize that also with other courts across North America, which was mentioned, where maybe they'll be stealing ideas from you soon, Clerk Hammond. But really the imagine the possible of don't be afraid to imagine a different world where the foot traffic to your office decreases by something like 90%. Like the results that we've seen have been staggering in terms of really bringing people online and just recognizing that it works better for everybody that way. And so those use cases where it's kind of an edge case and in the history it's not been online, those are things we thrive on and would love to solve your challenges.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Jean. Shannon, I think this question is specifically for you because this is Florida related. So there's someone in another county from Florida on this webinar, and they want to know a little bit more on whether or not they're exploring ways to reduce delinquency, especially when it comes to D6 suspensions. I guess it's something that's specific for Florida. And they want to know if you guys have been able to see successes there. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what a D6 suspension is for those who don't know it and kind of share a little bit of your insights.
Sure. So Florida statute requires that 90 days past the due date. So whatever the either judicially ordered due date is, or if you got a traffic citation, you have 30 days to pay. Obviously, a judge or a traffic hearing officer can give you 90 days to pay or whatever those terms are. But 90 days after you're delinquent, by law, we are required to remit information to Department of Highway Safety here, and they will issue a D6 letter. So basically what they're letting you know is you're late and your license is going to be suspended. You have a period of time in order to make it right. You have to pay a late fee, but once you're suspended, now you're in a whole nother world. Suspension on your driving record, suspension, forget car insurance if you've had suspension on your license, things like that. So the conversation nationally, and we have heard it, and similar to Clerk Hammond, we are a fee office. So our office runs solely on the share of court-related revenues that we're allowed to keep. So Florida statute is very specific in what the delineation of who gets what fees, but we collect on behalf of state general revenue, state trust funds, local county, local municipal law enforcement agencies, the such. So if less revenue is coming in, we don't have enough money to fund our office. We receive no property tax or sales tax, which are the largest bases here in Florida. So as folks have come in, and the conversation nationally has been, not suspending, because it seems counterintuitive to suspend a license and now somebody can't go to work. But there is no other, let's call it a penalty if you're not paying. And so if there's no penalty at all, folks aren't, why would you pay at all? So the conversation for us is we seem to kind of be ground zero. We don't make the laws, we enforce the law, but we're the face. It's our name. It's the clerk's name on all of this messaging. It's the clerk's name on these fee statements. Was we need to work in order to make sure that folks never get to suspension. So let's not have a conversation about suspension. Let's not get you to suspension. So we employ as many tools as possible, but what I can tell you is the tool that by far has the greatest success rate is a payment plan. Educating constituency, but then working with them to get on a payment plan at a reasonable amount. We saw success in that to begin with. But where folks were dropping off in non-compliance was, again, issues where they forgot, they couldn't get downtown to make the payment. Some folks, returning citizens, don't have bank accounts, so writing check is not even an option for them. So they're coming in, they have to come in person because they're paying cash, things like that. So we saw an exponential increase in success on a payment plan when it moved to the Pay It platform. And folks had the ability to, they get the reminder, because I forgot that even earlier, they're getting a text reminder. They can go on and trigger that payment. So again, it's $1, it's $5. But as long as they're making the payment, they stay out of suspension altogether, because there is no ability for the clerk. We have no authority to not suspend if you don't pay. It's the law. So again, payment plans and giving people tools to be compliant is the key. So the success rate is, I don't have any of our stats in front of us. Our team has put stats together, but you can absolutely see the difference in compliance when somebody has the opportunity to both self-serve and then be on that payment plan. So our next venture, so I'll throw it out there that we're pitching to want a dialogue with Pay It is the almighty compliance, because I didn't have proof of insurance or my driver's license wasn't with me. So, we're ready to turn the corner and go. So let's talk to you, Pay It. What we would like is to be able to have somebody upload those images. You can go on your cell phone now under notes and PDF, a copy of your driver's license. We want an ability to show compliance. Please don't drive downtown and go, here it is, my insurance card, and $10 and we're on our way. So let's present that as a tool, so that folks don't even have to mess with that.
That's right.
So find your problem, know what your problem is, understand the impact to your constituents, then turn around and you can use a technological solution.
I think that is so true. That definitely hits home. All of us wait till the very last moment on the last due day of, right? And then 5 o'clock happens. And even though you submit your payment, but the system is not accepting the payment and reconciling you for the current day. So I could definitely connect the dots.
Yep.
Clark Heeman, is there anything you would like to add?
No, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. And thank you for the association with Pay It. We're great partners. And I would invite you all to come to the Smoky Mountains and spend a lot of money.
That's so tempting. Well, everyone, thank you so much for making time. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you next time.